A very common question we get is how much did it cost to frame our garage apartment? So I'm finally addressing this in video form, and throughout the video I'll be popping up snippets in my spreadsheet so you can see a little more detail about the various items as I'm listing them. I'm thinking about making this entire spreadsheet available for a small fee so that people can get kind of an idea of what it costs to build in today's day and age in today's dollars with actual receipt values. If that's something you might be interested in, just drop a comment below and let me know. Now, I'm not going to go through every single receipt line item because there's a ton of them, a ton. About a year ago, I posted this video about how I use ninja-like procurement tactics to buy our lumber using an Excel spreadsheet. It basically went something like this. 84 Lumber, what's your project? Hey, good afternoon. I'm building a house and I need some lumber. Oh, great, we can help with that. How much you need? Well, a lot. And I actually have it all listed out on an Excel sheet. Is that all right if I just email it to you? That sounds fantastic. Here's my email address. At this time, lumber was still in the headlines and prices were really high. So I got creative to save on costs, and that meant ordering from many suppliers. So between this procurement technique and the fact that I wasn't able to predict with 100% accuracy every single nail and board that I needed for the project, I have upwards of 40 transactions for all the lumber, adhesive, fasteners, etc. And I'm not gonna go through all that. Second disclaimer is that this is not the cheapest framing design that you could ever dream up for a residential building. We actually started on the idea of using a post frame structure, or a barn-dominium as it's commonly known now, and this is pretty widely accepted as one of the cheapest ways you can build a wood frame structure per square foot. We ultimately chose stick frame construction because we wanted a perimeter foundation wall and we wanted fully sheathed walls and roof to accept traditional siding and roofing underlayment. Additionally, with a second floor living space and a walkout deck, we wouldn't have saved a whole lot going post frame, especially because of our roof. We had a salt box style roof, which means unequal pitch, and because of that, we were not able to have a truss frame roof like most traditional houses have. With our 36 by 40 building size and the dormers coming out the front and the width of them in particular, the structural engineering just did not really work out to truss frame this roof. So it was a traditional rafter frame roof with a structural ridge beam, which also added some cost. So with those disclaimers out of the way, let's get into why you clicked this video, which is the money part. Starting off with dimensional lumber, this is our pressure treated sill plate, all our wall studs, top plates, headers, and rafters. The total came out to $10,887. I'm writing to the nearest dollar because that's just easier. Dimensional lumber is a commodity product, comes from forests and mills all over the place, not really brand dependent as far as price goes. So for the most part, like all the rest of the framing items, I got it at the cheapest supplier I could find. Next is engineered lumber, and this is a little bit brand dependent. This is all of our sheet goods, so our wall sheathing, floor sheathing, roof sheathing, engineered I-joists, and LVLs. That's laminated veneer lumber. If you're not familiar, they're basically big plywood beams. The total for our engineered lumber was $15,410. We did make an upgrade to our wall sheathing by going with the zip sheathing by Huber Wood. It's basically got the house wrap integrated into it, and we're pretty happy we went this direction. But that was probably a couple $1,000 upgrade. As I mentioned about the ridge beam roof, we had to use more LVLs than is common in a structure this size. Our ridge beam, for example, is a double ply 18-inch deep LVL that runs the whole 40-foot length of the building. That ridge beam by itself was probably $1,200, so you can see how the cost really adds up. Next is a category in framing that doesn't get a ton of attention, but because we use the zip system sheathing, we had to use their proprietary tape to seal all the seams, which is really good stuff. We used it for a lot of other things besides that as well. But 17 rolls of zip tape, a whole kit of subfloor adhesive for gluing our subfloor panels down, and 4 rolls of foam sill sealer under our sill plates came out to $719 total. Most of that was made up by the zip tape. That stuff's not cheap. Next, let's talk metal. These are all of our rafter hangers, our I-joist hangers, and the center 3-piece steel column that I had custom fabricated to hold up our ridge beam all the way from the footer. The total for all of this metal came out to $1,590. Last but not least, fasteners. This is something you definitely can't forget about when you're doing any sort of project. Framing fasteners goes beyond just nail gun nails, which I did buy a lot of, but you can't forget about the concrete wedge anchors that hold your sill plate in, regular old hand drive nails, the specialty Simpson hand drive nails for their hangers, or the structural screws I use to screw all my header together. I'm pretty proud that the actual spent amount on this was only 55 cents more than my initial guess. The total for all of our fasteners were exactly $1,000.55. So the material only total of our framing project came out to $29,606.55. One thing to note is that between $1,000 and $2,000 of that dimensional lumber is 2x4 bracing lumber and 2x8 footing form boards that I still have, and I'm definitely going to be reusing in a future project, but it didn't physically go into the build. I just needed it as a tool for the build. So that's materials only, and if you watched our framing videos, you know that I hired a crew to come help do the second floor and the roof, which thank goodness I did, because I probably would have killed myself otherwise. But that Amish crew I had on site for a little over a week didn't come free. The only material I asked them to bring was the nails for their guns, because I didn't know what they had, but otherwise this cost is just purely their labor time. The initial contract price for finishing the whole second floor was $11,000 even. But when we were done setting all the I-joists, we really did not feel like putting all the sheets on ourselves, so I tacked that on as another day of labor to their contract, and that was an additional $1,300. Of course, we also brought a telehandler on site to facilitate all of our framing tasks. That came with a 12-foot work platform, delivery, and fuel. The total for that machine rental for 2 weeks was $1,617. That brings our grand total to, drumroll please, $43,524 for framing by itself. That's a lot of cash. And in fact, it is going to be the single most expensive trade out of the whole build. And when you think of house building, you kind of think of framing. So that kind of makes sense. And it's a ton of raw material. One more thing, tools. All that framing on the first floor didn't just put itself together. I bought a number of tools to facilitate this project. The big hitter expenses for tools were my cordless framing nailer, my 60-volt framing saw, the jib boom for my skid steer for raising the walls, turnbuckles for aligning all the walls, the spiral cut router bit for cutting out our door or window openings, the list goes on. If you want to see the exact products, we have links in the description. But the total for tools specific to framing was $2,112. So if you really want to get technical, I spent $45,636 on framing. But in my head, I don't really count tools because I'm keeping them for life and I just love tools. Of course, none of the lumber or the labor that I mentioned in this video includes deck framing. That is going to be a project for later this year, and I'm going to do a whole separate cost video on that at some point in the future when I actually have a deck built. You're probably thinking, wow, $45,000+ on just framing. That's a crap ton of money, and you're absolutely right. We saved up forever to do this project, and while it does hurt writing these checks, it feels pretty awesome at the same time. A great prequel to this video is the cost of our foundation, which is right here. If you haven't seen that, check it out. Oh, and I've been wearing fuzzy reindeer PJs this whole time.